We're here today to do a deep dive into a new, unique feature for pro traders on OKX called Portfolio Margin. My name is Adam James. I'm a senior editor here at OKX Insights, the research and analysis arm of OKX. I'm joined by my other senior editor colleague, Hunain, as well as Lennix, a director at OKX, and Tom, a member of the product team that created this very exciting new trading feature. He's going to tell us more about the portfolio margin and how it works. Hey, Tom, how are you doing today?
Hey, good, thanks. Hi guys, happy to be here. So today I will walk you through the portfolio margin mode on OKX, and I will show you how it works and of course how to enhance your trading strategy. I do want to take a moment to point out that this tool is created for professional traders trading with large portfolios, and it is specifically designed for options trader. And that's where you will see it is most effective. The difference between portfolio margin mode versus the typical unified account on single and multi-currency margin mode is that we are actually considering the portfolio as a whole, where we will measure this portfolio in different types of risk units, and we will basically charge margin on based on the assessment of this risk unit. And I will shortly showing you how to actually enable portfolio margin mode in OKEx. Okay, so this is the typical OKEx trading screen. Over here, you will see a setting on the top right-hand corner where you can click onto it. And then over here, there is a account mode where it currently shows simple, but we can basically click on it and then select the portfolio margin mode at the right-hand side. We simply click activate it, and then it will be activated successfully. And this is how we trigger the portfolio margin mode in OKEx. So let's get started to show you some of the examples where the professional traders would have benefit by the portfolio margin. Let's start with the very basic one. It is related to a kind of a very typical strategy called the corporate calls, which is very common for options trader to have a delta positions, which is netting the outstanding options. So in this case, you can see that in a normal mode, customers or the traders would have a specific futures positions, which is basically in this case, he is long like 13,000 of contracts on a BTC December 31st, and which in this mode, this is the screen for like the typical multi-currency margin in the unified accounts. We have a separate set options that is being sold on top of this futures as a contract with a 70,000 strike. You see the margins over here for the typical unified account is around 560K in the maintenance margin. When it is being switched into a portfolio margin mode, in this case, you see out of the same positions that we are mimicking, we are seeing actually like 100K lower in the maintenance margin. And due to the fact that the call options that the customer is actually shorting is actually partially offset by the delta that they have longed in their existing BTC contract. And this is why the delta risk, when the delta risk is being reduced, the margin is also lowered in the portfolio margin mode. And this is the first case. If that's all good, then we will move into the next case where we are seeing multiple options having their risk being net off. So this is a very typical kind of cost spread, or we call it bull spread. In this case, in a typical multi-currency margin mode in the unified account, due to the fact that the positions that is having a long options in the book will be basically considered as a isolated margin. That's why the effect of the two calls with their offsetting natures, they cannot be net off in the risk. And that's why the margin utilization that is required to put on is higher, which we see is around 300K in this case, where the customer is long and short on a cross spread. But while when it's switched into portfolio margin, you see the same positions get a reduction of around 200K in terms of the maintenance margin, because now the two positions offsetting and the risk nature is being effective and has been taken considered in the portfolio margin mode. And let's look at something more complicated or sophisticated in the sense that, for example, as a butterfly. So customers has long and short in the same expiry on different strikes. And you are seeing that in this typical multi-currency margin mode, the charge on the maintenance margin is around 125K. In this case, it's a butterfly. But when it is expressed in the portfolio margin mode, it is basically reduced to 54K, which is much less as a multi options link. And the last one will be basically on a situations. Even we are mentioning that it is specifically beneficial to options trader, but actually for customers or traders who have like large delta one positions, for example, if you are long and short on different maturities on the futures on the same underlying, they could also be offset in considered in the risk. For example, in this case, customer has a relatively large positions in terms of long a in November futures on BTC while it is shorting on a December futures. For example, in this case, the customer's positions is creating a 1 million kind of a maintenance margin in the typical multi-currency margin mode. It is getting offset in due to the nature of the delta offsetting. US when it is switching into a portfolio margin mode, it is reduced into like 800K in this case. And basically, these four cases illustrate how portfolio margin can help various kind of positions which have risk offsetting nature to be benefit. That's it.
Right, right. Okay, so would you explain how the risk management kind of works and which positions do you think work better in tandem when you're doing kind of like a hedging strategy, or does it really not matter? For example, is it more conducive for people who trade options, or just people who don't trade options don't really get a lot of benefit from it?
Sure. So basically, as previously we mentioned in the four cases, the first three cases are more options related, especially when you have like a lot of options on similar expiries or when the Vega positions are being offset due to the long or short options, they will be the most beneficial because no matter in terms of delta or Vegas or other Greek metrics, these offsetting will be factored in the portfolio margin calculation. But meanwhile, as I also point out in the last example, when you have a large delta one positions which have a native delta offsetting, but maybe due it only exposing in specific like basis risk due to the different expiries or different maturities, they could also be beneficial. So it really depends on the composition of your positions and the risk nature. I have to say that not all of the positions or portfolios will be beneficial, but for risk offsetting nature kind of positions, they will be the most beneficial to use the portfolio margin.
Okay, great. And Lennox, from your perspective, since you deal with a lot of institutional investors, I understand that a lot of them were kind of demanding portfolio margin. So how do you see their strategies changing when they use portfolio margin on OKX, and how do they benefit from it?
Right,
Yeah, I
that's a
think.
very good question. Uh,
Yeah, I think that's a. I think um, right now trading crypto is getting a lot more capital intensive because there are a lot more instruments. It's require a lot of capital quotes and trade. So that's the reason that we come up with a unified account in the first place. So I think portfolio margin is more like an optimization on the upgrade of the current or the basic concept, the current direction that we're heading to. We're trying to uh, make our trader as capital as efficient as possible. So I think, but as Tom has already said, I think the portfolio margin, in terms of in terms of the benefit of margin offset, if you have a portfolio that is have option embedded in it rather than a multiple, especially even more beneficial if you have multiple legs of option. You can see a huge benefit of margin offset. So I would I would assume that there will be a lot more option market maker would be coming on board to trade in OKEx, and after subsequently benefit to the entire crypto option industry as well. Because when one market is getting a lot more efficient for the option market maker, I think the option market makers of the liquidity of for the option on each strike might be 5 times more or even 10 times more, and subsequently benefit to the other option exchanges and the entire crypto option market in terms just in terms of liquidity because everyone's risk is lower. So I think might be you can see our option market, not just OKX market, we will be starting to get a really pick off this year because of this innovation.
Right. And as I understand, the portfolio margin mode, especially with these characteristics and features, is not very widely available in the industry, right? I mean, this is something that OKX is kind of pushing.
Very unique, very unique. As
Right.
you can imagine. Um, so first of all, performance margin is actually the concept of performance margin is created by CME, and it's like groundbreaking historical moment before when in traditional finance. But we are the very first one who introduced this concept, this risk management, this kind of risk management concept into crypto, and you should assume you can assume that uh, working the similar methodology with professional market in crypto is even more challenging in crypto rather than if you compare with traditional finance because they're bigger, the liquidity is lot better, and they have a lot they have clearing house, clearing member to act as the guardian of the risk management components. So crypto is a lot more difficult because in terms of in terms of historical market data, we have a lot less. The correlation and liquidity is kind of compare with traditional finance. So we managed to do it. I think is one of the really exciting moment for OKEx, and I would say might be the one of the most challenging features and projects that OKEx has ever made. To.
So, Tom, I quickly just wanted to ask you another question. I understand that the portfolio margin mode is a different liquidation system compared to the multi-currency margin mode. So, can you kind of just like give a brief overview how that works, the differences over there, the liquidation system?
Sure, no problem. So as you point out, it is very different when we are doing like liquidation in portfolio margin versus the multi-currency margin or the typical unified account mode, because we actually consider the portfolio as a whole. And we basically measure our positions based on the different type of risk unit. So we actually, first of all, we will introduce a so-called delta hedge kind of mechanism, where we will actually, at the very beginning when the positions is reaching before it is getting liquidated, we will measure the outright exposure in terms of how much delta positions that it is moving, because most of the time when the market is moving vigorously, it is on the delta. And we will basically see the positions of the customers to see what kind of delta that they are exposing the most, and then we will basically reduce the delta by adjusting their future positions. That will be kind of different from the existing multi-currency margin where we will close the positions, but instead in a portfolio margin case, we may actually create some of the new futures positions which have a risk offsetting nature with the existing portfolio to bring down the customer's risk. And our bottom line is that we want to ensure that through this delta hedge mechanism, customers' position will be brought back to a safe level by the delta hedge. But of course, when the delta hedge kind of mechanism cannot fully satisfy the bringing down the risk of the customers into a safe level, then we will basically have other types of liquidation procedures. For example, we may have calendar spread kind of liquidations to reduce the basis risk of a specific customers, and eventually we'll go to the general positions liquidation afterwards. But it is indeed more sophisticated in terms of the liquidation mechanisms in portfolio margin that the customer should be aware of.
No, I have a
Right,
question.
right.
Oh, sorry, I thought, yeah, yes, sorry. So you talking about Canada spread liquidation? Are we talking about where if during the liquidation we are going to not just reducing the client position, but to add position for the client on behalf of the client?
It doesn't mean add positions, but it's because of the nature that when we are trying to segregate different risk unit, for example, when the first thing that we are looking at is the outright delta, but
Yep.
some of the customers, they may have a very delta neutral positions as an
Yep.
outright, but they
Yep.
actually express their positions in a specific, for example, a long November's kind of futures, but I short a lot in the December futures, which makes my
Oh.
position looks like a delta neutral one. So in those cases, we will need to reduce the customers' November December spread to make sure that, for example, in a very extreme market move, when these two spread kind of deviate a lot, then we
Yeah.
will reduce the calendar positions that the customer has. As a result, to as again, the bottom line is to bring back the customer position into the safe level.
All right, great. Thanks, Tom. That's all really good stuff. And I think that's about it for today. So I'd like to thank everybody for watching. For more information on portfolio margin mode and why it's so effective for pro traders, do check out the links in the video description. Also, if you have any questions that we didn't answer in this call, feel free to leave them in the comments on YouTube, and we will get back to you, or reach out to us on any other of our social media channels. As always, give this video a like if you found it helpful. And don't forget to subscribe to OKX so you never miss a new video as soon as it goes live. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you next time.